According to everything we know, the cosmos should be relatively homogeneous and perfectly understandable. Matter must be distributed uniformly in all directions from our little blue planet. Our solar system has always been considered just an ordinary speck of dust in a standard and predictable galactic neighborhood. For many years, we sincerely believed in the cosmological principle of absolute universal equilibrium. We expected to see a stable structure that could be easily described by the simplest mathematical equations. Astrophysicists developed elegant and beautiful theories about exactly how our stellar home is organized. But the reality turned out to be completely different, and new data from instruments stubbornly confirmed this. Instead of a tranquil region, we suddenly found ourselves inside a structure of unimaginable, terrifying dimensions. This gigantic anomaly distorts the motion of hundreds of thousands of galaxies around us and alters the laws of physics. It turns out that the familiar world hides enormous secrets right on the threshold of our solar system. What once seemed like an unshakable truth now looks like a massive and terrifying illusion. And the strangest thing is that for centuries, we completely failed to notice this enormous trap. All of classical astronomy was built on observing the nearest, most familiar objects. For centuries, people studied the motion of the planets and compiled detailed catalogs of bright stars in the night sky. No one suspected that these tiny glowing points concealed the global architecture of the void. Scientists were convinced that if we studied our tiny corner of the universe, we would understand the structure of the entire cosmos. For a long time, this naive belief prevented science from viewing the problem from the necessary grand perspective. We simply did not have the right tools to grasp our true scale. For a long time, we considered our position in the vast cosmos to be completely understood and thoroughly studied. Scientists had carefully mapped the brightest stars closest to us and the neighboring large galaxies. Our home system seemed comfortably situated on the quiet outskirts of the vast Milky Way. We liked the idea of being isolated observers in this tranquil corner of space. We grouped our galaxy with the Andromeda Nebula into the so-called local group. This small cosmic family appeared extremely stable and predictable in its unhurried motion. Our telescopes regularly recorded the slow gravitational dances between these nearby stellar islands. Researchers were convinced that the gravitational influence of the local group defined the boundaries of our immediate cosmic environment. We thought that beyond its boundaries lay simply the endless and boring emptiness of intergalactic space. This model gave us a pleasant sense of security and complete understanding of the world around us. The vast distances between clusters seemed a reliable guarantee of our eternal solitude. All calculations matched perfectly, and nothing foreshadowed the coming grand scientific upheaval. But then the equipment became more powerful, and our gaze began to penetrate ever deeper into the darkness. Astronomers began to notice strange deviations in the movement of our galaxy through infinite space. The Milky Way was not moving quite as the good old laws of celestial mechanics prescribed. We recorded an inexplicable drift that stubbornly defied all mathematical predictions. Some incredible invisible force was pulling our local group in a strictly defined direction, and this pull was too powerful to be attributed to ordinary instrument error. At first, scientists assumed that we had simply miscalculated the mass of neighboring Andromeda. Dozens of attempts were made to adjust the formulas based on new data about the nearest stars. However, no mathematical tricks could explain the gigantic speed at which we were hurtling. Our entire stellar family was moving through the icy vacuum at over 2 million kilometers per hour. This incredible cosmic journey was taking place right now, while we slept peacefully on Earth. The scientific community began to realize that it was facing a mystery of a fundamentally new level. Data continued to pour in, and the picture became increasingly confusing and incredibly alarming. Scientists tried to find the source of this gravitational anomaly among the neighboring clusters known to us. They meticulously rechecked the mass of all visible stars and gas within a radius of millions of light-years. Astrophysicists literally combed through every cubic parsec of observable space in search of an invisible tractor. But the collected matter was catastrophically insufficient to create such a monstrous gravitational tugboat. It was as if we had found ourselves in the rushing current of a full-flowing river, completely unable to see its banks. It was then that it became crystal clear that we were overlooking something truly colossal. Our cozy local group turned out not to be an independent island, but merely a tiny cog in a vast mechanism. We were moving towards something hidden in the darkness, and the speed of this movement was only increasing. Our planet, the Sun, and billions of neighboring stars found themselves captive to a previously unknown entity. The familiar map of nearby space suddenly lost all meaning and relevance. The scientific world froze in anticipation of answers that were bound to completely overturn the foundations of astrophysics. Old observational methods had finally reached a dead end in the face of this global problem. It is impossible to study the big picture of the world by simply examining individual pixels on a huge screen. To unravel this mystery, a qualitative leap in the development of our computing technologies was required. We needed to recreate the entire universe from the very beginning in a virtual digital space. Engineers set about assembling the most powerful clusters of thousands of processors for a monumental calculation. Only in this way could we hope to see the invisible connections between scattered galaxies. To grasp the essence of the problem, we had to completely change the scale of our close observation. Astronomers needed to view the universe not as a scattering of individual points, but as a unified system. The most powerful supercomputers, capable of modeling the evolution of our entire cosmos, were brought into play. The basic laws of physics and data on cosmic microwave background radiation were fed into these electronic brains. The project was named Illustris, and its results sent shockwaves through the scientific community. What we saw on our computer screens forever changed our understanding of reality. Machine intelligence revealed that matter in space is not scattered in a random and chaotic manner at all. It arranges itself into incredibly complex and dense structures resembling a giant neural network. Gravity acts as an invisible architect, meticulously assembling matter into specific forms. Galaxies cluster into long, luminous filaments that permeate the entire observable universe. These filaments intertwine into colossal knots, forming the most massive structure of all known. We named this incredible architecture simply and eerily, dubbing it the Cosmic Web. Realizing this fact was the first truly serious blow to our fragile cosmic ego. We understood that our movement is dictated by the architecture of this gigantic and invisible web. Our galaxy is like a drop of water gliding along the threads of this vast gravitational web. We lost our status as independent travelers, becoming specks of dust in the cosmic wind. And we are not gliding through it alone, but together with millions of other neighboring worlds. This discovery forced us to urgently search for our exact location on this frightening new map. Scientists set to work with redoubled vigor to map not just galaxies, but their vectors of motion. They measured the velocities of thousands of star systems to chart the great cosmic currents. Astronomers recorded the directions of matter flows, much like oceanographers studying deep-sea currents. The work proceeded slowly and demanded a colossal strain on all of our planet's computing power. Every new vector plotted only confirmed the existence of a vast structure hidden from us. And soon, the silhouette of a true cosmic monster began to emerge from the chaos of data. we finally saw the contours of what was holding us in its incredibly strong gravitational grip. The scale of this structure simply defied the limits of human reason and understanding. It was a discovery that made even the most skeptical researchers shudder. All our previous notions of the size of the cosmos turned out to be infinitely far from the reality of the situation. Our local group turned out to be nothing more than a microscopic hair on the body of a gigantic supercluster. And for decades, we had lived inside this colossus, completely unaware of its actual existence. The realization of the reality of the cosmic web forced us to completely rethink the physics of the void. What we had always considered empty intergalactic space turned out to be filled with hidden life. The Illustri's simulation clearly demonstrated how invisible dark matter forms the framework of the universe. Without this heavy, invisible mass, the entire structure would have long since fallen apart into tiny pieces. This dark foundation draws ordinary gas toward itself, from which luminous galaxies are then born. We have seen a world where luminous objects merely follow obediently behind an invisible and formidable mass. This new view of the cosmos evokes a strange sense of existential and profound anxiety. We have grown accustomed to trusting our eyes and optical telescopes when studying the night sky. Visible stars and planets have always been our only reliable anchor in exploring the world. But now it turns out that visible light shows us only a paltry fraction of the real picture. The true architecture of the cosmos is hidden from us in the darkness and reveals itself only through gravity. We are like blind travelers, trying to feel our way around the dimensions of a gigantic ancient castle. Dark matter functions as a vast framework to which all the worlds we know are attached. It pierces the void with thick, invisible ropes, forming channels for stellar streams. All the beauty of the cosmos that we see is merely a light foam on the surface of a dark ocean. We cannot touch these filaments, but we can clearly see galaxies sliding down them. The realization of our powerlessness in the face of such fundamental forces makes humanity frighteningly vulnerable. We have become hostages to rules that were written long before Earth came into existence. Complex computer models have shown us the true scale of these monstrous cosmic filaments. The length of a single strand of the cosmic web can reach hundreds of millions of light years. By comparison, our entire vast Milky Way seems like a tiny speck of dust against the backdrop of these filaments. Along these grand highways, rivers of hot gas and galaxies flow in a continuous stream. They rush toward centers of attraction, obeying the cold dictates of dark matter. Where these filaments intersect, dense and incredibly massive galactic clusters form. These nodes act as gravitational wells that mercilessly suck in all surrounding matter. It is within these colossal nodes that gravity reaches its most extreme and terrifying values. There, massive collisions of entire galaxies occur, generating bursts of incredible and destructive power. Young stars are born and die in this cramped environment at a rate unimaginable in our tranquil region. These regions resemble seething cosmic metropolises, where the life of stars is short and brutal. We see the light from these gigantic cataclysms millions of years after they have actually ended. To find oneself inside such a galactic crossroads means becoming a participant in incredibly aggressive processes. Huge black holes at the centers of such clusters constantly devour the surrounding superheated gas. Powerful radiation streams sterilize entire planetary systems, destroying any hope of life. There reigns true cosmic chaos, where only the most massive and durable structures survive. Observing these clusters from a distance gives us a unique chance to study extreme physics. Fortunately, our current location is very different from these dangerous stellar whirlpools. But our solar system is not located at one of these noisy and bright intersections. We are situated somewhere on the quiet periphery, slowly drifting along one of these filaments. Our region is more like a remote rural province on the outskirts of a huge metropolis. Thanks to this relative calm, life on Earth has been able to develop unhindered for billions of years. We are not being torn apart by the monstrous gravity of neighboring large clusters. However, this temporary lull in no way cancels out our inevitable forward motion. This fact forces us to ask ourselves a very unpleasant and frightening question about our future. If all matter is inexorably flowing toward the massive nodes of the web, then what is our final destination? We cannot stop our movement or somehow alter this route dictated from above. We have no engines capable of resisting such a fundamental law of nature. Our galaxy is merely an obedient passenger on this gigantic gravitational escalator. And this escalator is slowly but surely carrying us straight into the arms of the unknown. At first, we thought that this final destination was a massive cluster of galaxies in the constellation Virgo. It is relatively close by cosmic standards and possesses a colossal mass. For a long time, astronomers believed that Virgo was the center of our vast local region. Our entire local group was considered merely a distant and submissive outskirt of this massive cluster. Scientists were convinced that we were simply drifting quietly toward this massive and familiar center of mass. This theory seemed logical and fully satisfied most of the world's leading experts. It seemed that the picture of the universe had finally coalesced into a coherent and consistent concept. Researchers wrote detailed articles about exactly how our merger with the Virgo cluster would occur. We were preparing for a future in which our galaxy would become part of this gigantic stellar family. Mathematical models confidently predicted our trajectory millions of years into the future. It never occurred to anyone to doubt this convenient and understandable cosmological paradigm. But nature once again taught us a harsh lesson in scientific humility. But the longer we observed the general flow of galaxies, the worse the situation became. The Virgo cluster turned out to be insufficiently massive to explain the entire picture of motion we were observing. We were moving too fast, and our vectors clearly pointed past this old reference point. Moreover, this grand cluster itself was also moving through space along with our galaxy. We were all hurtling together even further, driven by a far more powerful and ancient force. Our supposed center turned out to be just another stopover on a long journey. This discovery forced scientists to nervously review all the old catalogs and star charts. We began searching for the true cause of our motion far beyond the Virgo cluster. Telescopes pierced through the dense dust clouds of our own galaxy to peer deep into the background. Studying this region has always been a major challenge for observational astronomy. For a long time, this zone was completely hidden from us, creating a vast blind spot for observations. And when we were finally able to see through it, the results were staggering. There, in the incredible distance, lay something with a mass equivalent to tens of thousands of massive galaxies. This dark region drew absolutely everything within a radius of hundreds of millions of light-years toward itself. It acted like an incredibly powerful magnet, against which all other forces were powerless. Scientists didn't know what to call it, so they gave it a frightening name: the Great Attractor. It acts like a giant vacuum cleaner, sucking in colossal amounts of matter from all around. And we are right in the zone of its monstrous gravitational and inescapable influence. The scale of the Great Attractor forced scientists to completely rethink their understanding of gravity. It is not just a cluster of galaxies. It is the central hub of an entire continent in the cosmic web. Our entire stellar family, along with the Virgo cluster, is doomed to fall into this dark abyss. Our falling speeds reach terrifying magnitudes that are difficult for the human mind to comprehend. We are inexorably approaching a place where the concentration of mass exceeds all conceivable limits. All we can do is passively observe this great cosmic journey through radar screens. The existence of the Great Attractor has long remained one of the greatest mysteries of astrophysics. We saw its immense influence on the surrounding world, but could not discern its true shape and size. It cunningly hid behind the dense disk of the Milky Way, like a predator in tall, thick grass. This hidden presence made our picture of the world incomplete and frankly ominous. We constantly felt its heavy breath warping space far beyond the boundaries of our system. We understood that we were inside something enormous, but could not even imagine its true boundaries. The breakthrough came only in 2014, after many years of extremely complex calculations. A team of researchers applied a completely new method of mapping outer space. Instead of simply marking the positions of galaxies, they began measuring their relative velocities. They distinguished the chaotic expansion of the universe from the actual physical motion of star systems. This approach allowed them to see the invisible boundaries of gravitational wells in space. Previously, astronomers had only created static maps of the night sky, similar to ordinary photographs. This did not provide a complete understanding of exactly where the vast masses of matter were moving. Now, however, researchers have begun to record the dynamics and true direction of hot gas flows. They have been able to trace the long paths of thousands of galaxies through the icy vacuum of space. This monumental shift in scientific approach has brought a whole new level of understanding of reality. Imagine a massive mountain range that divides rainwater flows into two different directions. On one side of the mountain, rivers flow into one ocean, and on the other side, into a completely different one. Scientists have discovered exactly the same invisible watersheds in the distribution of galactic flows. They mapped these boundaries and finally saw the true shape of our supercluster. This discovery was a real sensation and forever changed astronomy textbooks. The boundaries of these gigantic basins are determined solely by the gravity of monstrous masses hidden from view. Where the gravitational pull of one gigantic structure weakens, the sphere of influence of another begins. Galaxies that find themselves on such an invisible watershed slowly and inexorably drift apart in opposite directions. For the first time, humanity was able to draw clear boundaries of its own stellar continent. This continent turned out to be incredibly complex and mesmerizingly beautiful in its internal architecture. Our cosmic home turned out to be a structure of simply incredible and awe-inspiring proportions. It comprises 100,000 galaxies, bound together by a single, continuous gravitational flow. This gigantic network spans 500 million light-years across. Scientists gave it the beautiful Hawaiian name Laniakea, which translates to vast heavens. But behind this poetic name lies the harsh and frightening physical reality of our situation. It would take light hundreds of millions of years just to cross Laniakea from end to end. During this unimaginable span of time, entire civilizations could arise and vanish completely on Earth. The mass of this entire structure exceeds that of our own galaxy by 100,000 times. Such mind-boggling figures simply do not fit into the human mind's usual perception of space. The mind simply refuses to comprehend such vast volumes of matter and the surrounding void. Laniakea resembles a colossal glowing flower, whose petals consist of strands of matter. All these strands converge at a single central point, where all the galactic rivers inexorably flow. And this central point turned out to be that very mysterious and powerful Great Attractor. Now, we finally understand that this is not just a random massive object somewhere far away. It is the gravitational heart of our supercluster, which dictates the fate of hundreds of thousands of worlds. This ultra-dense core beats at the very center, drawing absolutely everything within a vast radius toward it. It functions like a gigantic cosmic pump, continuously drawing in ancient star systems. The power of this gravitational pull is so great that it overcomes even the global expansion of the universe itself. Galaxies obediently tumble into this deepest gravitational vortex, like water into a massive drain. And this massive process has been going on non-stop since the formation of the first massive stars. Why then have we been unable to discern this gigantic structure around us for so long? The answer lies in our own extremely unfortunate position within this grand structure. We are inside Laniakea, much like a bacterium inside a massive multicellular organism. From the inside, it is incredibly difficult to grasp the true shape and scale of the entity of which you are a part. It took us decades of data collection just to mentally step outside the confines of our cell. The Milky Way's dense disk reliably blocked researchers' view in the most critical direction. A thick veil of cosmic dust and bright stars acted as an impenetrable soundproof wall. Astronomers had to use radio telescopes capable of penetrating this dense curtain of matter. Only in this way were scientists able to piece together the missing fragments of this colossal cosmic puzzle. And the picture that emerged turned out to be far more complex than even the boldest theoretical predictions of physicists. This realization brings with it a profound and lingering sense of existential human weakness. For decades, we considered ourselves explorers conquering the boundless expanses of the universe. But in reality, we have turned out to be hostages of a colossal structure that is slowly dragging us into its maw. Our movement toward the Great Attractor is not merely a journey. It is our inevitable cosmic finale, and we are utterly powerless to oppose this absolute and blind force of nature. Our future fate is inextricably linked to the processes occurring at the very core of Laniakea. The scientific community anxiously wonders what exactly awaits us in this gravitational cauldron. Will individual stars survive such a monstrous compression of immense masses of matter in the future? For now, humanity has no precise mathematical answers to these pressing questions of survival. The only thing that is clear is that we are headed for a plunge into an environment with the most extreme physical conditions. But the situation begins to look even bleaker when we look at the very edges of our Laniakea. Where the influence of our Great Attractor ends, the domains of other monstrosities begin. Scientists have discovered neighboring superclusters, such as Shapley, which possess even greater mass. They are pulling entire chunks of our Laniakea toward themselves, tearing it into gigantic gravitational shreds. Our vast home has turned out to be nothing more than a battlefield between incredible cosmic titans. We are at the very center of this slow but utterly merciless cosmic war of annihilation. Galaxies collide and merge, obeying the commands of these invisible gravitational generals. And we do not know what will happen to our little world when these structures finally come together. Perhaps our Milky Way will simply be torn to pieces or cast into the cold intergalactic void. This prospect makes our reality far more brutal than we previously thought. Understanding the structure of Laniakea has completely shattered the good old myth of a peaceful cosmos. We now know for certain that the universe is not a cozy place for the leisurely development of life. It is a seething cauldron of colossal energies and the ruthless gravitational laws of physics. And our modest survival to this day is simply an incredibly fortunate coincidence. We just haven't managed yet to reach those places where conditions become truly hellish. With every new map we draw, our sense of anxiety only intensifies and grows. We try to peer beyond the limits of Laniakea to understand what awaits us in the foreseeable future. But our instruments reveal only new, even more massive and terrifying cosmic structures. We have hit the barrier of our own understanding of space and vast distances, and the more we learn, the less we feel in control of our own destiny. Now we must come to terms with the idea that Laniakea is not the end of our address. As soon as astronomers came to terms with the scale of this supercluster, they began to explore its boundaries. And here, reality dealt another, even more crushing blow to our theories. It turned out that Laniakea itself is not an independent and isolated object in space. It is merely a part of an even grander and incredibly complex cosmic architecture. Researchers had hoped to find a void beyond the boundaries of our gigantic stellar continent. They expected to see a clear boundary beyond which the influence of gravity fades away. However, the most powerful radio telescopes revealed a completely different, stunning picture of the macrocosm. Superclusters do not float in isolation. They are tightly packed into even more massive structures. The boundaries of Laniakea turned out to be permeable to forces beyond imagination. Scientists analyzed the motion of neighboring superclusters and discovered a frightening pattern. It turned out that Laniakea, along with all its neighbors, is obediently moving in the same direction. This global flow of matter engulfs structures billions of light-years around us. This phenomenon has been named the dark flow, and it defies any logical explanation. The laws of modern physics simply do not allow for the existence of such large-scale and directed movements. According to cosmological models, matter should be distributed chaotically after the Big Bang. The scattering of galaxies in all directions should be relatively uniform, like an inflating balloon. But this powerful directed flow completely shatters basic academic concepts. It seems as though someone is forcefully pulling a piece of our balloon toward them. This mysterious vector of pull has puzzled the greatest minds of modern theoretical physics. We see hundreds of superclusters rushing toward a single hidden and incredibly distant point. Something beyond the edge of the observable universe possesses gravity of unimaginable and monstrous strength. This entity pulls Laniakea toward itself as easily as magnets attract fine iron dust. We cannot even see this object, because its light has not yet reached our telescopes. But its relentless grip is already felt in every calculated movement of our own galaxy. This unknown formation must possess a mass exceeding that of billions of galaxies. Physicists cannot even find the right term to describe such a colossal anomaly. Some suggest that this influence comes from a completely different, neighboring universe touching ours. Others believe it is residual distortions of space from the very first moments of time. In any case, this colossal magnet remains astronomy's most terrifying mystery. This discovery makes us feel like mere specks of dust in a powerful hurricane. If Laniakea is an entire continent, then the dark flow is the movement of tectonic plates. Our reality is beginning to crack at the seams, unable to withstand the pressure of these new, terrifying facts. We are forced to admit that the forces governing us lie far beyond our sight, and we have no idea what the ultimate goal of this global and insane cosmic march is. Every new level of scale that is revealed mercilessly diminishes humanity's significance. Science constantly pushes back the boundaries of our understanding, exposing ever-new abysses of the unknown. We used to fear asteroids. Then, we were terrified by black holes and the death of the sun. Now, however, the threat comes from processes that engulf millions of star systems at once. This terrifying knowledge creates a vast information gap that science is desperately trying to fill. In their attempts to unravel this mystery, scientists began mapping broader regions. They tried to place Laniakea within the context of neighboring galactic filaments and gigantic voids. Thus, a colossal structure was discovered named the Perseus-Pegasus filament and the Cetus-Pisces complex. This monstrous formation stretches a full billion light-years across the cosmos. And our beloved Laniakea turned out to be just a tiny offshoot of this unimaginable colossus. The Cetus-Pisces complex looks like a colossal wall of sparkling galaxy clusters. It is a true hypercontinent, compared to which Laniakea seems like a mere peninsula. To fly around its borders would require capabilities beyond even the wildest imaginings. The extent of this gigantic structure constitutes a significant portion of the entire observable universe. It is the absolute record holder in size among all cosmic formations known to science. The scale of the Whale-Pisces complex simply defies the ordinary human mind. It comprises about 60 large superclusters, each of which is similar to our own. This gigantic cosmic strand is 10 times larger and more massive than the entire Laniakea. We have officially become residents of a structure that occupies a significant portion of the observable universe. And this realization brings neither joy nor pride in our new cosmic address. We have found ourselves at the very bottom of the deepest gravitational well, from which there is no escape. Our whale's tail thread resembles a thick rope woven from millions of galactic destinies. And this rope is stretched between voids, like a string on a gigantic cosmic instrument. We have no idea who or what has stretched this string with such monstrous force, but we clearly feel the tension that permeates every cubic meter of space. The most frightening thing about this situation is our complete loss of any control or significance. For many years, we hoped that one day we would be able to travel freely among the stars and galaxies. Science fiction writers described grand empires spanning countless neighboring star systems. But now we realize that any of our flights are merely the fluttering of dust motes within a hurricane. We are physically incapable of overcoming the currents dictated by such immense structures. The rapid current of the Cetus complex carries us into the dark unknown at a speed of millions of kilometers. We cannot stop. We cannot leave this path or change our direction. Our solar system is a tiny raft stuck in a turbulent and dangerous mountain torrent. And ahead of us may lie cosmic rapids we don't even suspect exist. The future of humanity turns out to be completely subject to the blind and indifferent physics of gigantic masses. Every new study only adds new and terrifying layers to our understanding of the world. We hoped to find harmony and peace, but found only an endless struggle for gravitational survival. Space turned out not to be empty at all. It was filled to the brim with aggressive and heavy structures, and we found ourselves trapped right in the center of this chaotic and brutal cosmic mechanism. Our reality began to spiral out of control, and that was only the beginning of our problems. Gradually, astronomers began to study this colossal whalefish filament in detail, trying to find logic in it. They mapped the distribution of matter density within this gigantic structure. It was expected that the matter would be distributed relatively evenly along the entire length of the enormous filament. Scientists hoped to see a uniformly glowing river of star systems and hot gas. However, new calculations revealed a completely wild and alarmingly heterogeneous picture inside the filament. The structure turned out to be filled with strange knots and deep, eerily empty voids. These voids resembled giant cavities in Swiss cheese, where there was a complete absence of any stellar population. Time and again, telescopes detected huge blind spots interrupting the majestic flow of galactic rivers. Astrophysicists had to admit that the grand structure turned out to be incredibly loose and ragged in its physical essence. In some places, the filament thinned so much that it barely held together against complete gravitational rupture. This discovery forced a re-evaluation of all mathematical models for the formation of such cosmic megastructures. It turned out that even the strongest cosmic ropes can have catastrophically weak links. Our own Milky Way turned out to be located in an extremely specific and strange region of this filament. We are not in the dense and densely populated center, where life teems around ancient superclusters, nor are we at the very edge of the filament, where matter gradually dissipates into the void. Our galaxy is nestled on a thin and fragile bridge between two massive clusters. There is no dense ring of neighboring worlds around us capable of creating a reliable gravitational shield. This position makes us incredibly vulnerable to any gravitational fluctuations in the surrounding space. The neighbors of our local group are scattered at terrifyingly vast distances from one another. Such isolation greatly hinders any gravitational exchange and interaction between these isolated universes. We find ourselves as if on a narrow isthmus, washed on both sides by a bottomless dark ocean. Every movement of larger masses in the distance inevitably reverberates with a strong echo in our quiet neighborhood. This spatial geometry creates unique but highly dangerous conditions for the existence of entire galaxies. To draw an analogy, we live on a thin suspension bridge between two enormous continents. Any movement on these continents is inevitably transmitted to our fragile and narrow structure. Our massive neighbors are constantly pulling us in different directions, creating powerful internal tension. This hidden titanic struggle could lead to the destruction of our cosmic bridge at any moment. Invisible forces are methodically undermining the supports that hold up our entire local stellar region. We live in a state of constant and invisible threat, of which we are completely unaware in our daily lives. Ordinary people on Earth continue to go to work calmly and gaze at the night sky. No one notices the colossal tension that permeates every molecule of the vacuum surrounding our planet. But the sensors of ultra-sensitive orbital observatories impassively record these global distortions of space. They capture the invisible creaking of taut gravitational cables holding our bridge together. Sooner or later, one of the continents might pull harder, and then our bridge will simply collapse into the abyss. But the real problem emerged when researchers measured the exact density of our local environment. According to string theory, the space around us should be filled with dense intergalactic gas. This primordial gas is essential for the continuous formation of new stars and for sustaining active life in galaxies. It serves as the primary building material, ensuring the long-term evolution and growth of stellar systems. However, instruments showed that our region suffers from a catastrophic shortage of this fuel. It was as if we had found ourselves in a desert that had somehow miraculously formed right in the middle of the ocean. The data didn't just fail to match the elegant theory, it outright contradicted it at every turn. If we are inside the dense Pisces Cetus filament, why is our immediate surroundings so empty? Scientists began searching for a mistake in the calculations or an error in the operation of the new sensitive telescopes. They rechecked the calibration of the equipment, updated the software, and ran their supercomputers again. Entire research institutes spent days trying to find a simple human typo in the long strings of numbers, but the result remained the same. We are in an abnormally empty and meaningless place. No adjustments to the formulas could artificially add matter where it did not physically exist. Spectrometers stubbornly showed a pure vacuum instead of the expected dense clouds of hot hydrogen. Astronomers had to bitterly admit that their sensitive instruments were working absolutely correctly and without glitches. The problem lay not at all in the optics or complex machine vision algorithms, but in the very structure of reality. Once again, nature had harshly mocked humanity's orderly and logical theories. This void could not have arisen on its own within the dense and heavy cosmic web. There must be some physical mechanism that literally cleared the space around us. Some physicists have suggested that a series of colossal supernova explosions occurred here in the distant past. This released energy could have scattered intergalactic gas, creating a temporary local bubble of emptiness. Such monstrous shock waves are indeed capable of effectively sweeping fine dust out of the galactic surroundings. But the scale of this matter deficit is too vast to be explained by simple explosions. The situation was rapidly deteriorating with every new terabyte of data received and analyzed. This density deficit was not a local anomaly. It extended for hundreds of millions of light years. We could clearly see gigantic walls of galaxies in the distance, but a massive gap gaped right in front of us. It looked as if a part of our vast Pisces filament had simply vanished without a trace from reality. A massive chunk of the stellar continent seemed to have fallen through the fabric of space and time. And we are right in the center of this incredible and terrifying cosmic void. The scientific community faced a serious crisis, requiring an immediate and logical solution. Our elegant model of Laniakea and the whalefish complex had suddenly developed a massive conceptual crack. We were absolutely certain that we were securely situated within a gigantic and dense stream of matter. But all objective measurements stubbornly proved that we were sitting at the bottom of a dried-up well. Old cosmology textbooks instantly became obsolete and ceased to reflect the true picture of the world. We urgently needed a new hypothesis capable of explaining this glaring paradox of reality. It was then that desperate astronomers turned their keen gaze to what lies between the threads of the web. They began to study voids, giant spherical cavities that separate superclusters. Usually, these voids were considered simply boring and dead zones where nothing happens. No one had ever paid them serious attention, focusing instead on studying bright galaxies. Cosmologists viewed them as mere background noise, unworthy of deep scientific analysis. But now, these terrifying voids have become our only key to understanding the systemic failure. Studying these colossal spatial voids required the development of entirely new observational methods. Scientists had to learn to peer into absolute darkness and mathematically measure the degree of its emptiness. They discovered that voids can exert their own negative pressure on the surrounding matter. These enormous, invisible spheres of nothingness are capable of actively repelling galaxies, thickening the walls of the cosmic web. The realization of this hidden mechanism forced researchers to look at the map of our region in a completely different way. The researchers posed a question that forever changed the tone of modern astrophysical discussions. What if our original reference to the dense Pisces Cetus filament was absolutely and fundamentally wrong? What if our true position in the cosmos is dictated not by matter but by its complete absence? This thought sent a shiver down scientists' spines because it turned the world upside down. We turned out to be inhabitants not of a bustling metropolis, but of the most desolate and lifeless desert in the universe. And soon, this grim hypothesis began to find its terrifying and irrefutable confirmation. If we were wrong about our place on the thread, then we need to look for a new cosmic address. Astronomers began to carefully scan those very giant dark voids in our region. They were searching for the boundaries of the voids closest to us to understand their true shape and powerful influence. It was an incredibly difficult task, akin to trying to feel the edges of a huge pit in pitch darkness. And what they discovered made their blood run cold with overwhelming horror. It turned out that the void isn't just somewhere nearby. It is literally swallowing us whole. We had always naively believed that we were observing these dead zones from a safe and comfortable distance. Scientists viewed the voids as distant curiosities with absolutely no direct relevance to us. But it turned out that all this time, our telescopes had been looking at the world from within a very real spatial anomaly. Optical illusions generated by our local conditions have hidden the true state of affairs from us for many years. We were completely blind to the fact that we ourselves are the central part of a vast invisible void. In 2013, astronomer Ryan Keenan and his ambitious team published a shocking study. They painstakingly analyzed light from a multitude of nearby and distant galaxies, creating a three-dimensional map of the region. They claimed that the Milky Way does not simply glide along the edge of a vast cosmic filament. We are located practically at the very center of a gigantic spherical dip in the distribution of visible and dark matter. This colossal gravitational anomaly was named the Keenan-Barger-Cowley vortex, or the KBS vortex for short. The publication of this scientific paper caused a veritable sensation among academic astrophysicists. Many conservative experts initially flatly refused to believe in the reality of such a terrifying structure. They desperately tried to find gross errors in the data collection methodology or the statistical processing of the results. But subsequent independent verifications only solidly confirmed the frightening accuracy of these bold American researchers. And its dimensions turned out to be so enormous that they violated all known cosmological principles. The void of the Great Batch extends an incredible 2 billion light-years in every possible direction from Earth. To simply grasp this figure, one must imagine the distance that light travels over millions of millennia. This makes it the largest known void in the entire observable, boundless universe. It is so vast that it could easily contain not only the entire Laniakea, but also its neighbors. Our local bubble dwarfs even the boldest theoretical calculations of the last century in terms of size. The existence of such a colossal void poses an open challenge to the very principle of homogeneity of our cosmic space. According to the laws of physics, on extremely large scales, the universe should look exactly the same in any chosen direction. Matter should be distributed uniformly, like fine sand on the perfectly smooth surface of an endless beach. But this enormous void acts like a gigantic rut on this flat mathematical landscape. By all the rules of the standard model of physics, such gigantic holes simply should not exist. Yet the data inexorably confirms its existence and its incredibly terrifying physical nature. The density of matter inside this colossal bubble is 20% lower than the cosmic average. This figure may seem insignificant to the layperson, but for astrophysicists, it is a veritable global catastrophe of mass deficiency. We are located at the very center of a zone where billions of galaxies and an innumerable number of stars are missing. Our solar system is comfortably situated at the very heart of absolute cosmic nothingness. And this nothingness is slowly but surely dictating its own harsh laws of survival to us. This deficit of stellar matter means that our region was deprived of resources even at the stage of the universe's formation. We live in a kind of gravitational vacuum that formed shortly after the initial Big Bang. The surrounding void lacks sufficient mass to actively influence the formation of new stellar islands. We are deprived of the turbulent influx of fresh gas that abundantly bathes galaxies in richer regions of the universe. Such spatial isolation makes our stellar environment extremely vulnerable and unstable in the long term. This new reality forces us to completely rewrite all textbooks on modern astronomy. We thought we were surrounded by dense structures and safely protected within the Pisces-Cetus complex. But it turns out that all these monumental structures are merely the thin, shimmering walls of a gigantic soap bubble of emptiness. We are firmly locked inside an incredible sphere where matter is merely a rare and vexing exception. Our universe turned out not to be a crowded and noisy place, but a frighteningly empty and infinitely quiet room. Life inside such a colossal void is fundamentally different from life in the densely populated regions of galactic clusters. Here, there are almost no large-scale collisions, no bright bursts of star formation, and no active exchange of matter. Galaxies within the void's central black hole system slowly evolve under conditions of strict isolation and a total shortage of cosmic resources. It is a slow and sorrowful decline, stretched out over tens of billions of years with no chance of renewal. Our own Milky Way has become a hostage in this vast desert with no hope of salvation. This groundbreaking discovery has led many to reflect on the grim Fermi paradox and the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. For decades, we have stubbornly sought out other civilizations, expecting to hear their loud signals in the dense ether. We have always assumed that the cosmos around us is literally teeming with life and advanced technologies. But if we are objectively at the center of the greatest void, then we simply have no one to talk to. Our frightening isolation is not biological but purely physical and insurmountably geographical in nature. We are like shipwreck survivors stranded on a tiny raft in the middle of a lifeless ocean. We scream desperately into the radio frequency darkness, but for billions of light years around us, there is not a single passing ship. All advanced civilizations, if they exist at all, dwell far away on the dense walls of this gigantic bubble. Their radio signals will never reach our antennas because the spatial distances are too unimaginably vast. This absolute void is an ideal and utterly insurmountable quarantine for all of humanity. With every new confirmation of the vacuum boundary structure, VBS theory, the level of alarm in the scientific world only increases. Scientists realize with horror that our specific position makes us effectively blind to the rest of the universe. We view the world through the highly distorting prism of our own local and profound void. Light must traverse vast, rarefied spaces, which imperceptibly alters its basic physical properties. This means that many of our fundamental constants and laws may turn out to be fundamentally incorrect. If we misjudge the density of our region, all calculations of the universe's expansion rate may be erroneous. We have been measuring the average temperature of the room while locked inside a giant industrial freezer. Our earthly instruments were calibrated to a local void anomaly, not to the true nature of distant space. This is forcing physicists, with a heavy heart, to reevaluate the recession velocity of supernovae and the nature of the mysterious dark energy. We have suddenly found ourselves at the very beginning of a long journey to understand the true laws of stellar existence. We are seriously frightened not only by loneliness, but also by the very realization of our colossal vulnerability to time. Voids are not absolutely static structures. They have the frightening property of constantly growing and expanding. The walls of the local bubble are inexorably receding from us, carrying precious matter away into unreachable distances. Our deep void becomes emptier with every passing second of cosmic time, and there is absolutely nothing we can do to stop this global process of withering. Being inside a vast bubble of emptiness casts a terrible shadow over all of our science. Astrophysicists have begun to suspect that our specific location distorts the very results of our observations. In physics, there is the concept of the local Hubble flow, the speed at which nearby galaxies are receding. We have always measured this velocity and considered it the standard for the rest of the vast universe. But the CBS void ruthlessly disrupts this orderly system of ideal mathematical coordinates. The fact is that the void has less gravity than the dense walls of our giant bubble. This means that matter inside the void is pulled toward its edges with immense and increasing force. The galaxies closest to us are flying apart much faster than the average rate across the cosmos. They seem to be trying to escape this empty and inhospitable zone as quickly as possible toward dense structures. And we, being at the center, perceive this flight as the accelerated expansion of the very fabric of space. This distortion creates a terrifying illusion that has baffled the best physicists of our modern world. We measure the expansion rate near Earth and obtain specific, stable figures. But when we look at the cosmic microwave background radiation from the early universe, we get completely different values. These two figures stubbornly refuse to match, creating a profound crisis in our understanding of physics. This paradox has been named the Hubble tension, and it is literally driving theorists mad. If we truly live inside a gigantic void, then the Hubble tension finds a logical explanation. Our local region is expanding faster simply because we are being stretched toward the edges of the void. But this explanation offers no relief. It only underscores our profound isolation. It means that our telescopes are lying to us, distorting the true picture of the vast external world. We are sitting in a room with curved mirrors, trying to use them to study the structure of the entire galaxy. The scale of this optical and gravitational deception is difficult to overestimate or logically justify. All our knowledge of dark energy and the fate of the universe is based on these distorted observations. We have built grandiose theories on a foundation that turned out to be saturated with a local and terrifying void. If we remove this vacuum correction, half of modern physical models will simply crumble to dust, and we will be left alone with a world that we do not understand at all and cannot describe with formulas. Realizing this fact makes us feel trapped by our own limited perception. We hoped that the laws of physics were universal, but it turns out they are highly dependent on location. We cannot simply step outside the boundaries of the LHC void to take clean, independent measurements. We are doomed to forever make corrections for distortions, hoping we haven't made any mistakes in our complex calculations. Our science has turned into an attempt to make out the details of a landscape through thick, dirty glass. The deeper we delve into this problem, the more oddities begin to surface. Astronomers have discovered that light from distant quasars passes through our void with noticeable anomalies. The void acts as a massive diffractive lens, altering the properties of photons passing through it. We receive distorted signals that could conceal absolutely any information. Who knows how many important messages or phenomena we have missed because of this gravitational filter? This invisible wall of distortions renders us deaf and blind to the true events in the universe. We can only guess at what is actually happening beyond the boundaries of our gigantic bubble. Perhaps processes are unfolding there that we cannot even conceive of within the confines of our isolation. This thought is far more frightening than mere physical isolation among empty and dead stars. We have not merely ended up on the sidelines, we have been locked in the dark basement of the cosmos. Many scientists still desperately resist the idea of the existence of the giant KBS void. They try to invent new forms of dark energy or modify Einstein's equations of gravity. They are willing to rewrite fundamental physics just to avoid acknowledging the fact of our absolute local isolation, because acknowledging this fact deals a fatal blow to our philosophical anthropocentrism. No one wants to voluntarily accept that humanity lives in the largest garbage dump in the cosmos. But facts are stubborn things, and new data only confirms this grim hypothesis. We live in a void that distorts our vision and deceives our finest scientific minds. Our home is not the bright thread of the Laniakea, but a blind spot on the map of galactic matter distribution. And we will have to learn to live with this terrifying knowledge, re-examining every line in our textbooks. The illusion of our greatness has fallen, giving way to a cold and indifferent void of immense proportions. If we piece all these terrifying facts together, a completely wild and incomprehensible picture emerges. We are in Laniakea, which is flying toward the Great Attractor as part of the enormous Pisces-Cetus complex. At the same time, we are situated at the very center of the most grandiose void in the entire observable universe. These two statements seem mutually exclusive and create incredible tension in our minds. How can we be part of a gigantic structure and simultaneously sit in the midst of absolute emptiness? This logical contradiction points to some kind of global and fatal systemic failure in our reality. Our attempts to describe the cosmos using simple geometric shapes have failed spectacularly. The universe turned out to be not just vast, it turned out to be fundamentally unknowable to our primitive minds. We have encountered an architecture that exists according to the laws of multidimensional and extremely complex topology. Our brains are simply not designed to comprehend such colossal paradoxes in the distribution of mass. There is a persistent and eerie feeling that someone deliberately constructed this spatial trap. Our local region of space looks as if it has been specifically isolated from the rest of the world. We are surrounded by invisible walls of emptiness that distort light and deceive our precise instruments. At the same time, we are tightly bound by gravitational chains to a current carrying us into impenetrable darkness. It is a perfect cage, whose bars are made of mathematical paradoxes and a lack of matter. Some radical theorists go even further in their dark and profound philosophical musings. They suggest that the contradiction between the input and the flow is direct proof of the world's illusory nature. If the physical data doesn't add up, perhaps the problem lies in the very basic code of our simulation. The program simply cannot correctly render such vast scales for our observation. We have stumbled upon the edge of our virtual sandbox, where textures begin to overlap. Of course, most serious astrophysicists reject the idea of an artificial simulation as unscientific fantasy. But even classical explanations offer no moral comfort or peace of mind. If this is a natural process, then nature has proven to be incredibly cruel and inventive in its forms. It has created a region that perfectly masks its true location from internal, unwitting observers. We are victims of the most sophisticated optical and gravitational illusion in all of nature. For decades, we have built exorbitantly expensive telescopes, only to ultimately realize our absolute and total blindness. Our search for truth has led us into a hall of mirrors, where every answer gives rise to 100 new questions. We are trying to measure the distance to the horizon while standing at the bottom of a deep and murky well. Our pride in scientific achievements gives way to a deep and quiet despair in the face of the unknown. Space does not let us near its secrets. It merely mocks our timid attempts at understanding. Every new day brings new terabytes of data, which only intensify this immense confusion. Scientists hope to find that one constant they could firmly grasp. But the universe constantly eludes us, changing the rules of the game at every new, vast scale. We thought we understood galaxies, but stumbled upon superclusters and gigantic streams of matter. We thought we understood the web, but fell into the vast and cold abyss of the KBS void. This process of the successive shattering of illusions forces us to constantly experience existential anxiety. We do not know which fundamental pillar will crumble under the onslaught of fresh satellite data tomorrow. Perhaps the Great Attractor will also turn out to be nothing more than an optical illusion, generated by the refraction of light in the void. Our reality has become shaky and unstable, like sand beneath our feet during a powerful earthquake. We have lost all confidence that our existence has any logical meaning at all. All that remains for us is to passively watch the unfolding spectacle, unable to intervene in the plot. We are flying through a gigantic bubble of emptiness toward an invisible gravitational monster in the darkness. And we cannot even be completely sure that our instruments are showing us the true picture. This state of helplessness and disorientation is the main and most terrifying discovery of modern astronomy. We have found our address in the universe, and that address turned out to be a sign on the door of a huge madhouse. Perhaps someday we will find a way out of this intellectual and physical impasse. Physicists will create a theory of everything that reconciles the void of the void with the flow of Laniakea in a single equation. But until then, we will be forced to live with the awareness of our absolute insignificance and blindness. Our familiar cosmos has ended, giving way to an architecture of paradoxes that is alien and deeply hostile to us. And we are locked inside this complex mechanism without a single chance of early release. The realization of our position within the void of the KBS raises the most terrifying questions about our survival. If we are truly isolated, what are humanity's chances of successful expansion in the future? We have always dreamed of colonizing neighboring star systems and gradually populating our entire vast galaxy. But even if we conquer the Milky Way, we will still remain trapped in this empty and lifeless zone. The outer boundaries of our gigantic bubble are too far away to be reached by any means known to physics. The distance to the dense, matter-rich walls of the void is measured in hundreds of millions of light-years of emptiness. No spacecraft, even one traveling at the speed of light, could cross this vast abyss in time. Such a journey would take hundreds of millions of years in conditions of absolute cold and a complete lack of resources. Our civilization will find itself trapped inside an emptying reservoir, doomed to a slow and prolonged decline. This trap of cosmic proportions renders our boldest dreams of an intergalactic empire utterly meaningless. To make matters worse, the very space within the void continues to expand relentlessly and rapidly in all directions. Galaxies are drifting apart, making the distances between them even more insurmountable with every passing second. In the distant future, the night sky above Earth will become completely dark and terrifyingly starless. We won't even be able to see neighboring galaxies because their light will no longer reach our eyes. Our world will be plunged into eternal darkness, surrounded by an unimaginable void spanning billions of parsecs. This scenario of a cold and lonely end forces us to look at the problem of the search for extraterrestrials differently. If other civilizations exist in the dense threads of the web, they are unlikely to ever look our way. To them, our void is a dead and boring zone, devoid of interesting resources and useful energy. No one in their right mind would send an exploration mission into a completely empty, gigantic pit. We are of no interest to anyone on the scale of the universe. We have simply been cast aside onto the most remote fringes of reality. Sometimes scientists seriously discuss the hypothesis that this isolation might actually be a great blessing for us. In dense clusters of galaxies where life is teeming, powerful gamma-ray bursts and supernova explosions inevitably occur. These cataclysms regularly sterilize entire planetary systems, wiping civilizations off the face of their worlds. Perhaps our position in the empty void saved Earth from this brutal cosmic radiation. The void became our invisible shield, allowing complex life to evolve peacefully in silence. But this saving silence comes at a terrible and unpredictable price in the long-term perspective of survival. We find ourselves in complete safety, but this safety resembles the security of a sturdy solitary confinement cell. We will not be killed by cosmic cataclysms, but we will slowly suffocate from a lack of space to grow. Our species will reach the peak of its development and run up against an invisible wall of the void's physical limitations. And then we will grasp the full tragedy of our original and unique geographical position. We are like a seed that fell into a tiny crack in a vast paved and empty parking lot. The seed managed to sprout and even produce a few beautiful green leaves thanks to a chance drop of water. But it has not the slightest chance of putting down deep roots or growing into a sprawling large tree. It is doomed to remain a dwarf plant, watching the unattainable and vast forest from afar. Such is the true fate of humanity in the face of this gigantic and insurmountable cosmic void. This realization compels us to cherish every atom of matter in our tiny solar system with renewed vigor. Earth is our one and only vessel in this endless sea of ringing nothingness. We must protect our planet, because on this scale, we have absolutely and categorically nowhere to run. All our resources are strictly limited by the boundaries of our galaxy, which is fading into the expanding void of space, and we must learn to live in harmony with the little that, by some miracle, we still have left. Perhaps our main lesson lies in humility before the true scale of the overwhelming universe. We must abandon childish fantasies of omnipotence and acknowledge our absolute physical fragility. Our science is capable of describing the trap we find ourselves in, but it is not capable of pulling us out of it. We are merely spectators, trapped in a vast, empty movie theater with no way to leave our seats in the back row. And the film being shown to us grows darker with every new frame we examine. With each passing decade, new telescopes will bring us increasingly detailed maps of our vast cell. We will know, down to the millimeter, the dimensions of those invisible walls that keep us trapped inside forever. And with every new discovery, our loneliness will become more palpable and scientifically proven. The trap snapped shut billions of years ago, even before the first glimmers of life appeared on Earth. And we became its captives at the very moment we first consciously gazed up at the starry night sky. Our place in the universe has turned out to be so complex and paradoxical that it completely robs us of our peace of mind. We can no longer simply say that we live in the solar system on the edge of a vast spiral galaxy. We must add that we are flying as part of the Laniakea supercluster toward the gigantic Great Attractor. We must specify that we are part of the colossal flow of the Pisces-Cetus complex in the dark web of matter. And worst of all, we must admit that all of this is taking place at the bottom of an incredibly empty abyss. This complex and multi-layered address is no cause for human pride or scientific triumph. It serves as a constant and stark reminder of how little control we actually have over our fate. Every part of this address carries a hidden threat and underscores our absolute physical vulnerability. We balance on a razor's edge between the monstrous gravity of clusters and the deadly cold of gigantic voids. Our familiar and cozy cosmos has forever dissolved into these terrifying and vast structures of the modern era. We have finally realized that reality is not at all what it always seemed to us in the past. The universe is not full of possibilities for us. It is filled with harsh rules dictated by immense masses. Our notions of symmetry and the homogeneity of space turned out to be nothing more than naive illusions of a limited mind. Nature plays its own games, the rules of which are hidden from us in the depths of dark energy and matter. And we are merely random and insignificant figures on this gigantic board, warped by gravity. The horror of the situation lies not only in its scale, but also in our absolute intellectual blindness. We do not know what lies beyond the Pisces whale complex and the vast void of Keenan-Barger-Koi. Our instruments show us only a tiny fragment of reality, distorted by local paradoxes and gravity. It is quite possible that this entire incredible structure is merely an atom within the body of an even more colossal entity. The infinity of space is terrifying, because within it there will always be a structure surpassing the previous one in size. Astrophysicists continue their grueling work, trying to find at least some meaning in this systemic chaos. They construct new theoretical models, hoping to reconcile the Hubble tension with the existence of gigantic voids. But every new elegant mathematical model requires the introduction of new, even more exotic and strange particles. Science is becoming increasingly abstract, drifting away from our familiar human understanding of basic things. We are building castles of complex equations on the shifting sands of our distorted and extremely localized observations. In this new, frightening world, humanity is relegated to the role of a passive and deeply anxious observer. We cannot send distress signals or warn neighboring galaxies of impending global threats. Our voice is forever lost in the endless expanse of the void, never reaching the attentive ears of potential neighbors. The great silence of the universe is not a consequence of the absence of life. It is a consequence of our isolation in the void. We are screaming into a vacuum, trapped in a soundproof chamber a couple of billion light-years in size. Perhaps someday we will be able to come to terms with this new, harsh paradigm of our humble existence. We will cease to reach for the stars and focus on preserving life on our little rocky sphere. We will accept our unique fate as outcasts within the vast and hostile cosmic architecture of matter. But until then, existential anxiety will haunt anyone who dares to look through a telescope's eyepiece. The stars no longer beckon us with their mysteries. They coldly and indifferently confirm our eternal loneliness. The familiar cosmos, full of friendly aliens and endless possibilities, has been left behind in the old books of science fiction. The real universe turned out to be more complex, colder, and more paradoxical than any of our boldest predictions of the past. We have found our place, and it turned out to be at the very bottom of the largest pit in the entire observable universe. This truth is bitter to swallow, but it is the only genuine achievement of our astronomical science. We have seen the light only to discover the absolute and insurmountable prison surrounding us. And now we are forced to live with this heavy knowledge every new day of our human history. We will build new observatories just to reassure ourselves once again of the immovability of the invisible walls of our cage. We will write new equations, trying to mathematically justify the cruelty of our cosmic imprisonment. Our search for truth has led us to a dead end from which there is simply no physical or logical escape. We are locked inside something incredibly vast, and now we finally know this for certain. The end of the familiar cosmos is the beginning of a new era in our profound philosophical understanding of ourselves. We are no longer conquerors of space. We are prisoners of gravitational currents and gigantic spheres of emptiness. Our greatness is measured not by expansion, but by our ability to honestly face this terrifying reality. We are small, fragile, and utterly isolated beings in a world of unimaginable energies and masses. And in this realization lies our sole, albeit very bitter, human victory over ignorance. Our universe turned out to be the greatest deception that blind and soulless nature could have devised. For centuries, we built our proud theories, confident in our ability to comprehend the design of the vast cosmos. But the cosmos merely waited patiently until our telescopes became powerful enough to grasp the full horror. And when we finally saw the light, it brought down upon us the full weight of our true addresses and coordinates. We realized that our perception of the world was merely a defensive reaction against the terrifying infinity of emptiness. Every new structure discovered, whether it be Laniakea or a giant void, only underscores our insignificance. We live in an era of the great shattering of illusions, when science brings more anxiety than joyful answers. Our quest to unravel the mysteries of the universe has led us to the very edge of a deep existential abyss of the unknown. And we stand on this edge, unable to take a step back or fully grasp the depth of the fall. Knowledge has not made us freer. It has only revealed the strength of the bars of our vast cosmic cage. Perhaps this harsh truth is the greatest test for our fragile minds. We must learn to live without false hopes of salvation from outside and without illusions about our cosmic grandeur. Our place in the web of matter is strange, paradoxical, and utterly disadvantageous for any long-term survival. But we are still here, and we are capable of grasping the incredible complexity of this gigantic trap surrounding us. We are locked inside something immense, yet our human mind remains free in its desperate quest for knowledge.